Hi sociology students, it's Mrs. T, and this is another one of your short lectures for week 9. We are talking about social stratification, which is a fact in the United States and around the world. There are unequal portions of society when you collect people together based on social characteristics that they have in common. Those different categories of people, when you evaluate them in comparison to each other, they are ranked based on certain characteristics, such as in the United States, occupation, income, and education. And around the world, also ascribed statuses are a big part of it, like gender and sex category, your race, your ethnic group. Those kinds of things also overlap onto those achieved statuses in order to create this unequal distribution of wealth and power within the population in the United States and populations throughout the world and among the nations of the world. And so that is what we're studying this unit 3. You have a project coming up to demonstrate your understanding about these different kinds of inequalities among categories of people. It'll be next week. I think last week I told you it would be this week, but in looking at how much ground I need to cover between now and when I give you the project, I think we need another week or so from today in order for you to have enough lectures and background in your notes to be able to be successful on that project. And that's my goal, is for all of you to be successful in the class in general, but definitely you need all the tools in your toolbox for each assignment as they come up. Okay, so today is a mini lecture to just give you some background information about some of the mindset that you need to have when you are trying to understand the class system in the United States and in other countries where class systems exist. So, I've been talking about the sociological imagination since week 1, and you are supposed to be trying to develop your sociological imagination. I think today is really going to help you with honing that skill, being able to see the connections between different facets of society. How do they link together? How do they affect each other? So right now, we're going to talk about macro scale issues like social stratification, and particularly the type of social stratification that we call a class system, and the economic system that is the foundation for the way we do business and our exchanges happen in the United States and in Europe and in other areas of Western culture, what we know as Western culture. Capitalism is predominantly the economic system, or at least the core of the economic system that is in place in our society. So, capitalism is key. Understanding a basic introduction to capitalism, which this is what we're doing right now. I'm not your economics teacher at all, but we need a basic understanding of how capitalism works without regulation, without government, laws to make sure that certain things happen that aren't necessarily part of the capitalist plan. This is just the basics of how capitalism works as an economic system. You need to know that because capitalism is cited, C-I-T-E-D, cited as one of the primary cause of why class systems, like we talked about in the previous lecture, why class systems come about in society. Class systems create inequality because they have ownership at the core of what makes the difference between you and me. If you are the owner or controller of certain social resources that I do not have access to own or to control, then there is a major difference between you and your category of people and me and my category of people. So let's look basically at what capitalism does before we move on in other lectures to look at some of the theorists who examined capitalism and how it creates inequality in society. Okay, so capitalism, as I said, is an economic system. There are many economic systems. Socialism, for instance, is an economic system. It discourages ownership. It discourages this cycle that I'm going to show you in just a second. Capitalism, on the other hand, encourages, rewards ownership and control of social resources. When you read in your textbook about this term social resources, well, I've got some examples written down on the board here. Raw materials, this phrase, raw materials, is going to be used a lot, in particular by one of the theorists that looked at the early stages of social class development in a capitalist society. So social resources would include raw materials such as my shirt is made out of cotton. So right up the street from me are many, many cotton fields, and every year when they spray them with the defoliant, I get all snotty and allergy ridden. It just happened for me a couple of weeks ago. But that land up the street from me, and those plants, and all of the machines, the cotton pickers and the planters and all this kind of stuff, that is part of the enterprise of producing that cotton, those are the raw materials that go into this shirt that I've got on. So raw materials, if you have ownership of that land, ownership of those machines, ownership of all the seeds, ownership of the gin that has to separate the seeds from the cotton flour, etc., then you have ownership or control of those materials, and therefore you're able to make a profit. Profit is excess of what it costs you to put in it. So the land costs something, the machines cost something, and then you charge more for the product so that you can pay yourself for your time, but also earn profit and increase what you started out with, so that the next time you go through the cycle, you've got bigger profits the next time. That's what reinvestment is. So you see, I've got capitalism as an economic system here, and then according to my style, I'm giving you some key words that must be in a good definition of the word capitalism if I ask you to write one or to explain it to me. You've got to talk about ownership or control. What are we owning? What are we controlling? These things, anything under the social resources category, and I've only given you just 3 examples. We will talk about others as we move to different lectures. But ownership, you're not just supposed to sit on it, you're not just supposed to hoard it, you're supposed to, in capitalism, use it. See, I've got this little cycle drawn on the board over here. You're supposed to own this stuff. I've just written the word stuff here because I'm referring to social resources. I'm referring to these things. So that's what stuff is referring to. In capitalism, the economic system encourages you to own stuff, but don't just sit on it and keep it and polish it and put it in the closet and look at it every now and then. You're supposed to use that stuff. You're supposed to seek out stuff to own so you can use that stuff to make a profit. So I have a lawnmower that I mow my lawn with, and I don't go out to my neighbors and say, hey, can I mow your yard too? And this is how much I would charge. Can we agree on a price? And you pay me. If I did that, at that moment, my lawnmower would switch from being just something that I own to some kind of profit generating something that I own. Okay, it cost me money. I can use the money I make from it to pay it off and then get a profit. So capitalism encourages you to do that. But capitalism also rewards you if, instead of blowing all the profit, I'm going to go to Magic Springs and just blow all of it. Instead of doing that, capitalism encourages you to take some of the profit. You don't have to do all. You can go to Magic Springs, just don't blow all your profit. You are supposed to reinvest at least some of the profit into owning more stuff so you can begin the cycle again of owning stuff, profiting from it, reinvesting, and every time you go around the circle, you end up with owning more stuff. Okay? So that's what capitalism encourages you to do. Now, here is a key issue that you need to take with you from this very short introduction to what capitalism is. Social resources here, social resources, all of these things, these are finite. here is a good word that should be in your college level vocabulary. It is not a sociology specific word. It's just a good word. It is finite. It has an end. Finite things are not unlimited. They are limited in amounts. So I use the cotton fields up the road from me as an example. Those fields are finite. They have borders. If you think of a map and think of the shape of the state of Arkansas or the shape of the 48 states of the United States, there are borders. So there is a limited amount, there is a finite amount of land within those borders. So with capitalism, if it encourages you to own stuff, make a profit, reinvest some of that profit, and then begin the cycle again, now with more ownership of stuff, if this stuff over here that we're talking about owning, if this is limited in amount, after a while, some people who are going through this cycle over and over and over again very successfully because they do business the best, or they have the best product, or you are willing to purchase their goods or their services because you like whatever kind of business philosophy that they have, or their product, or any number of reasons why you choose them over the competition. So if they compete in what we call the marketplace, they are going to be the ones in position to make a profit, reinvest the profit, buy more stuff, start out with a greater number of things now, a greater amount of stuff, social resources in this case, and then they make a bigger profit the next time around. They have more profit to work with to reinvest. They begin the cycle again. Each time they restart that cycle, they've got more and more and more, but there's not an unlimited supply. It's finite. So this is going to be one of the key concepts for how we're going to look at some early theorists and the way that they propose capitalism created a class system to begin with. Capitalism created and perpetuates social inequality to begin with. So please notice the links that we're making between an economic system and social stratification, and then economic system and then perhaps the work that you do, or the value of the wages and the salaries that you are going to make when you are purchasing and successfully working toward those degrees that you're focused on to be more competitive in the workplace, to get a better job and have a better income, right? Income, occupation, education. Hear me always linking those things back into this conversation. So in the next video, we're going to look at we'll look at one classical theorist and then a modern theorist who kind of updates his work. And so that's going to be the next two lectures. In each of those two lectures, we're going to look at a classical theorist and then an updated theorist who kind of modernizes what that original theory was. And guess who one of those people is going to be? Max Weber. I think we're not going to talk about him in the very next video, but I told you we'd be talking about him every single week between now and the end of the semester. So watch for another video from me shortly, and please don't ever hesitate to text with questions, and I really enjoy your comments in the discussion board, so please don't be shy. Bye.